Hi, I'm Stacy Gruber, and I'm delighted to be here to honor a true pioneer and trailblazer, Dr. Lester Grinspoon. I'm so sorry I can't be with all of you to celebrate on what would have been Lester's 94th birthday. It goes without saying that Lester changed the course of history with regard to cannabis, and in reconsidering marijuana, he really sparked a movement. If only everyone were willing and able to reconsider, to take a moment to look at something in a different way or from a novel perspective, or in the context of new data or information, and actually revise an opinion. While Marijuana Reconsidered remains a fundamental work regarding both the potential efficacy and safety of cannabis, that was only the beginning of his enduring contributions to science and the world. Cannabis has been used as medicine for thousands of years, and despite its storied past and the current discord between state and federal law, it remains an extraordinarily promising and effective option for so many. Lester recognized the lack of data focused on the impact of cannabis as medicine and published stories of real-world patients and their real-world experiences with cannabis, recognizing this as a critical step in allowing the medical community and the public to understand the real impact of cannabis as medicine, to lay the groundwork for additional research by exploring the known and potential therapeutic uses of this remarkable substance. Without his pioneering work, I wouldn't have been able to launch MIND, the Marijuana Investigations for Neuroscientific Discovery program, the very first in the country dedicated to looking at the impact of cannabis as medicine. The program supports studies that generate ecologically valid, empirically sound data with the overarching goal to ultimately harness the therapeutic potential of cannabis and cannabinoids while minimizing the potential risk and harm. And let's be clear, Lester never pretended there wasn't risk and harm for at least some. Cannabis has the potential to be the ultimate in personalized medicine, given the complexities of this extraordinary plant. In his later work involving legislation, he insisted that policies be based on science, that is, evidence. And as I've said before many times, science is dedicated to the pursuit of knowledge and truth. So with that, to Lester, your courage, tenacity, and integrity are a reminder that we all must do whatever we need to do to push the science forward, allowing for the myths to be dispelled and for truth to take center stage. You may no longer be here, but you certainly aren't gone. Your light continues to shine and guide so many of us, and I, for one, am incredibly thankful. Enjoy the celebration, everybody.
My name is Nick Smith, and I live in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I first met Lester in the fall of 2001 when I was a freshman, 18 years old at Harvard College. My friends and I decided to start a group called the Harvard Coalition for Drug Policy Reform. THC was important and was a part of the acronym of the name. We started the group and we needed a faculty advisor. So if you search the internet for Harvard and marijuana professor, Lester was, of course, the first number of hits that came up. And if you do it today, he's still the top 3 of 4, I believe. So we met Lester. He, of course, was delighted to be our faculty advisor. We needed 2 faculty advisors, in fact, because he had just gone emeritus. So we had another one who was our official advisor, but Lester was the real advisor and the one who gave us the most support. And we organized a couple campus events, including a visit from New Mexico Governor Gary Johnson at the time. And I remember Lester did a great speech before that with a full hall, about 300 students, I think, in the spring of 2002. And I think I first met Betsy that spring as well. Lester invited members of our organization to come out to their beautiful house in Wellesley for a barbecue. And I think about 15 or 20 Harvard students piled into cars and drove out to Wellesley. Probably got lost on the way. I remember missing the Wellesley exit on the Route 95 several times over the years. But we had a really warm welcome from Lester and Betsy at their beautiful house, and I think we really enjoyed burgers and you know, hanging out by the pool. I think some people played tennis, and that was the first of many visits to Lester's house. And he was always so welcoming and kind and funny, and it didn't matter that we had decades of age difference between us. Lester was so able to connect with people, and Betsy as well, and we always had a really wonderful time. I'll tell you, he had us out to his house at LaSalle Village as well, of course, and we stayed in touch over the years, and I was so happy to be able to introduce Lester and Betsy to my now wife and my kids. I think the last time we visited them probably was in the spring of 2019. I think we were up for my wife's reunion. And I'll tell you, one other thing I remember that Lester was always very fond of was bacon pizza. So we would go to his house, and sometimes he'd have us over in the winter, and usually it was a smaller group, maybe 4 of us, would come out to Lester's house, and Betsy and he would have us a roaring fire going, and we'd hang out and talk for a long time, and inevitably Lester would suggest maybe we should order some pizza, and usually we only needed maybe 1 pizza or 2 pizzas, but Lester always wanted to overorder because he always wanted to have leftovers so that he could continue to enjoy the pizza for days after we were gone. So I remember he was fond of the bacon pizza, and I never had had it before, and now it's something I continue to enjoy. Lester was also not just a friend, but really a grandfather figure in some ways for me. I didn't know my grandparents as an adult, and I would always bring my girlfriends over to Lester's house and introduce them, and sometimes, many times, I would be at his house and be single and bemoaning my dating life. And Lester was such a confidence builder for me. He really made me believe that I would eventually meet the woman that would be perfect for me. And he and Betsy were the model of the perfect couple. And he always said that the best decision he ever made was to marry her, and he felt so fortunate that they found each other. So that was an inspiration and a model for me in thinking, okay, I'm not going to worry. I know eventually I'll find someone, and I want our relationship to be like Lester and Betsy's. I also saw how wonderful he was as a father and a grandfather. We talked a lot about his kids and how his philosophy, raising them over the years, and being supporting them in their adulthood and as they were parents and becoming parents. And I just it gave me a real perspective on what I want in life, and the most important things in life, which are family and friendships. Of course, he had an incredible career too, and he always asked me about my work and encouraged me to stay in public service and keep working hard on social justice issues, and that's still what I do. So that was important, but I think a lot of professors and a lot of mentors only focus on the professional, and Lester was so much more than that for us. He was someone who was a friend and somebody who cared about our personal lives and our emotional and intellectual development equally.
My name is Rick Cusick, and I was the associate publisher of High Times magazine for about 18 years, and I was on the board of directors of Normal for about 10 or 12 years, I think. And Lester Grinspoon was my dear friend and colleague, and he told me a story once about his boyhood that I'd like to share with you. As you will see, I find there's a larger meaning in this simple story, but I'll let you decide for yourselves. I wrote it down because I wouldn't get it right unless I did. I hope you'll forgive me for reading it. Lester Grinspoon grew up in Newton, Massachusetts, a small Christian town back then. about 10 miles west of Boston. The Grinspoons were one of only 2 Jewish families in the town, and they had to put up with a lot of anti-Semitism back then. We're talking about the late 30s, the early 40s. The war was coming on. This attitude filtered down to the town's children, who tried to bully the Grinspoon kids on a regular basis. Lester was the middle child of 5. There was an older sister, Lenore, and 4 boys, Martin, Lester, Harold, and Kenneth. Now, Lester's older brother, Martin, suffered from a catastrophic brain injury, a birthing accident that left him paralyzed on the right side, that affected his speech, and around 4 years old, he started having epileptic fits, frequent epileptic fits. And as you might imagine, Martin became the prime target of the neighborhood bullies. Now, one day, the brothers were walking home from school on a little dirt road outside of town. I'm guessing Lester was maybe 10 or 12 years old at this time, so it was like 1938, 1940. And the bullies started harassing the brothers, and the bullies had figured out that if they threw rocks at Martin, they might be able to trigger one of his epileptic fits. So with the casual cruelty of children, they threw the rocks, and Lester and his younger brothers tried to fight back, and it turned into a fist fight, a real melee on the side of the road. And while all this cacophony was happening, Martin fell to the side of the road, and he started shaking. Now, while his little brothers tried to hold the line, our future Dr. Grinspoon had to quit the battle to go attend to his patient, or, to quote Lester, to try and stop my brother from swallowing his tongue. It was quite a skirmish as far as boyhood bullying skirmishes go. But that was just one of the examples, one of the challenges that the Grinspoon family had to put up with back in Newton, back in the day. The family took care of Martin as best they could, but I believe Martin passed away on the day after Lester graduated high school. It was terrible, terribly tragic. But in retrospect, Martin's passing allowed Lester to proceed with his plans for an education and become the man who we all know and admire. In that anecdote about the bullies, I see foreshadows of the man Lester would become. I can see him as the caregiver performing triage on the right side of the road, trying to keep his furry first patient from swallowing his tongue. And I see him as a fighter, as a protector, as a defender of those who could not defend themselves. I'll repeat that, as a defender of those who could not defend themselves. And I repeat that because that was Lester's role within marijuana law reform. For almost a half century, he defended those who could not defend themselves. He linked his growing reputation and his extraordinary scholarship to our defense. He didn't have to do that. He could have published Marijuana Reconsidered as a work of scholarship and be done with it. But he published it as a polemic, and that made all the difference. He was our champion. He was our dragon slayer. Before Grinspoon, we were called criminals and deviants and addicts and prisoners. After Grinspoon, we began to call ourselves patients, activists, citizens who had rights and who would in time assert those rights and stand up and demand justice. And as for that little kid back in Newton on the roadside in 1940, that impressive kid grew up to be a very, very impressive man who would change the world, his world, for the better and forever, with the same compassion and courage they demonstrated on the side of the road in Newton all those years ago. Thanks for listening. You too.
It's quite intimidating to be asked to tell a story about Lester, in part because, as many of you will know, he was such a master raconteur that it was better to hear a story the fifth time, as did happen sometimes, than even on the first time. And so I'm a bit relieved that I'm able to do this remotely today from Chengdu, China, where I live. My name's Matt Bush, and I was fortunate enough to become friends with Lester when I was a Harvard College student, along with my friends Nick and Andrew. And there probably aren't too many people in the world that become friends with a bunch of college students who are 50 plus years their junior. But it really speaks to the type of person Lester was and how young at heart he was. It also speaks a bit to how he loved having an excuse to have people come over and swim in the pool and order way too many pizzas and subtly suggest to someone to make some brownies that he could then maybe spirit away when no one was looking, allegedly. But, you know, he was really young at heart, and it was so humbling to be around Lester because of he had achieved such amazing things in life and really amazing accomplishments, incredible professional and even cultural stature. And yet he was still so grounded and comfortable in his own skin and always willing to make time for people if he could help them. And so he always made time for his friends, and he always made time for people even that he didn't really know or maybe even would never meet. So this, you know, showed up, of course, in his clinical work, but also in the legal cases that he got involved in. And also the fact that he was still answering emails on the internet well into his 80s to help people with their questions about cannabis use. And so it was really just impressive person to be with. And you could just tell that he really adored his life. It started with his family. You couldn't spend time with him without realizing how devoted he was to his family. But it also extended to his hobbies, to the sort of art that he really, really valued and deeply engaged with, and to his friends. And so he always made time and focused on the things that he cared about. And most of the other things just rolled off his back. And now that I have a family and a career, it just is something that I still think about today, what an inspiring and impressive example it was of someone who was happy with who they were and happy with their life, and also wanted to help other people and wanted to try and help other people find their own happiness. And so I feel really fortunate that I was able to spend so much time with Lester. Some of my happiest memories are sitting by the pool or in front of the fire, or downstairs in the basement, and just enjoying my friend's company. And so thank you, Lester, for that. And thank you, Betsy, the lovely and incredible Betsy as well, for all of your tolerance and welcoming when this sort of slightly stoned band of college students turned up in your life, and then once they became adults just continued to turn up. We really love you and appreciate you. And anyways, sorry I can't be there today, but enjoy, everyone.
Hi, I'm Drew Magliazzi, and I'm here to share a little of what it was like to be friends with Lester Grinspoon, and of course Betsy. Certainly the stories about John Lennon, Ramsey Clark, Hunter S. Thompson, Timothy Leary, of course Carl Sagan. And did I mention Ramsey Clark, by the way? They captivated the imagination. Hearing them over and over through the years felt like the first time every time. Both because the stories were that good, and of course our minds were a little cloudy about the details each time. But the fact is, spending time with Lester was never really about the details. Nor is it a criticism to say we ate the same bacon pizza and repeated the same conversations time and again. While the content may have stayed the same over the years, frankly, we didn't. We started out as immature college kids, then became young adults trying to find our way in the world and hoping to get a little bit of guidance or at least a reassurance that it was okay. And then bringing our future spouses and eventual children to visit Lester and Betsy. For me, they were sort of like Ursat's grandparents. And each visit to Skyline Drive, well, if it wasn't the highest point in town officially, I will say that it always felt like that whenever we were there to visit, and especially when we were hitting the volcano. To get there took navigating 2 rotaries before arriving to the end of the cul-de-sac and seeing Lester and Betsy's house, enjoying the backyard with the swimming pool, the tennis court, and the volcano humming. There are a lot of memories of that place, and for some reason, the one memory that's sticking out in my mind right now is actually of when Betsy and Lester moved to LaSalle Village, which is part of LaSalle College. It's like an intergenerational retirement living community where traditional undergraduates and retirees go to school together and even commingle. Like the undergrads, work in the dining hall for the retirees, for example. And I remember Lester going there and telling us the story about dropping some hints to some of the other residents about marijuana and being a little dismayed that none of them were picking up what he was putting down. Lester, of course, thought these were subtle, but Betsy disabused us of that fact and said they were quite obvious. Nonetheless, I was a little worried that Lester wasn't going to find his people at this new living situation. So luckily, about 3 months later, we went back and we were having dinner in the dining hall when a bunch of students came over and, paid their regards to Lester and Betsy and walked away with a giggle. That's when Betsy conveniently leaned over to me and pointed out that those were the students that Lester had smoked a joint with out back recently. And that is when I knew everything was okay. Now, not only is this a hilarious story, I also think it says a little bit something about my relationship with Lester, in that intergenerational friendship is not something that is tremendously common in our society, outside of the family, of course. And it's not to say that marijuana is the only reason we were friends. There was certainly a lot of time, especially that 6-month stretch of abstemiousness, to prove we weren't addicted to the stuff, that we spent not smoking marijuana. But it was certainly a catalyst for bringing us together. And I wonder what the world would be like if young and old got together and passed the peace pipe a little bit more. At the very least, I know that whenever I left Lester and Betsy's, I always left with the echo of laughter, a little sense of nostalgia, the thought that I really should probably smoke a little bit more marijuana than I had been, and, a sense of overriding belonging. Even in the times of my life when, I was struggling to find my place and my way, that house, that friendship was a refuge. So thank you, Lester. Thank you, Betsy. Lester is an icon, an iconoclast, and certainly somebody who paved the way for marijuana to be reconsidered time and time again. In fact, somebody at his Shiva pointed out the fact that, marijuana reform, in many cases, decriminalization, destigmatization, was not only, a recreational movement, but there was really a social justice element to it. So long marginalized communities have been associated with this drug and not only stigmatized, but literally put in jail as a result. So I like to think that, Lester did his one small part, not only to make the world a little bit more joyful, a little bit more accepting, certainly open-minded, and a little bit more fair. And most of all, I'm glad it brought us together. So thank you for the friendship, and I'm glad you all get to celebrate Lester today. Thanks for including me.
Hello.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Hi, it's Tonio, Megan, and Nora. For those who don't know us, I wrote a couple things that I'm going to read. Lester and Betsy always treated me like family. In my teenage years, Lester was really the first one to open my eyes to the possibility that maybe, just maybe, my family was cooler than all the boring science dinner parties I grew up on. Not because he made Carl or Lynn's work particularly appealing or digestible to me, nor was it by utilizing his vast skill set in psychology to outwit my adolescent brain. Nope. It was because the older delinquents I looked up to knew that he was the weed guy. After all, he wrote Marijuana Reconsidered. I remember the first time I saw a vaporizer, it was at Lester's house. And the first time I smoked weed with my dad was behind some bushes in Telluride, Colorado. Lester was not there, but David was. Hello, David. Thank you for taking one for the team and making that a lot less awkward for me. And when I got pulled over in Nebraska, while Nebraska was in the process of suing Colorado for the overspill of edible cannabis products, and I was accused of possessing a half-eaten weed brownie someone left in my center console, I swear it really wasn't me. And then they weighed the brownie, called it concentrates, and gave me felony charges. Lester was willing to go to bat for me then, too. What I mean is, just stop yawning. All right, we ready? Okay. What I mean is, Lester was always there for me. I don't have a single negative memory of him nor Betsy. And hey, Betsy, we love you, and I'm sorry that I'm not there. You guys are going to be there, though, right? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I'm grateful for every story Lester told me. When my daughter Nora was born, we took this picture.
Huh?
We're going to cut to a picture right here in the video.
Yeah.
Okay. And then Betsy went and found a similar picture from when I was born. And then there's going to be a picture showing of when I was born. And that's what life is really about. Lester's physical form is no longer, but the arms he extended to me as a baby, those arms that remained open to the point when I had a baby of my own, that is a tradition. And that tradition will live on. Hug?
Hugs?
Hug.
Okay.
Hi, Lester. I'm going to speak to you directly because I had hoped to be there with everyone celebrating you and honoring you in this incredibly special and remarkable day, Lester Grinspoon Day. And I'm unable to make it, but then again, you can't make it either. So I will speak from afar, but with you close in my heart. And I want to begin by thanking you for your rescuing me in 1992 in my first arrest and Mike's first arrest, and how you gave and were such a guiding light, and that you really offered so much for all of us. But for me, you flew in like an angel, and you provided not only testimony, but you opened a door to a friendship, a long-lasting friendship, and one that I feel to this day that guides me and supports me, and I hope that I've been that to you. I am going to tell a semi-humorous story at David's request. I want to talk about a time when, well, we would often talk after lunch, after you'd eaten lunch. And on this particular day, Betsy had joined you at the table. You were still sitting there and we were chatting. And you joined in conversation, and so did Betsy, about some of the many attributes of marijuana, some of the symptoms that it relieved, and some of the characteristics of marijuana. And then you brought this little sparkling piece of information, which I share with you, and many of us do. But you brought into the conversation the way that it enhanced the intimacy that you share with Betsy. And you did it with such love and affection, and that twinkle of humor in your voice that you have, that you had and gave to us and shared with us. It was just such a delight to to share that place with you and invited me into a deeper connection with you. You said that it heightened not only your sensual experience, but it also opened the connection between you and Betsy, and between Betsy and you, in a most beautiful way. And I really love that you shared that with me. And I'm sure you shared it with many others. And I know that you shared it with Betsy. I want to thank you for the greatness that you are, that you offer to those around you, because great people want those around them to be great too. And you inspire greatness in others. You give opportunities for greatness. You give intellectual, you give heartfelt, emotional, you give humor, wisdom, kindness, and you're quite a spry character. Thanks for inviting me to share this life with you. And I'm on your tail. I'll be seeing you everywhere. Thanks. Much love.
Hi, I'm Donald Abrams,
And I'm Clint Werner.
and we're here in San Francisco. Sorry we can't be there. So in 1992, Rick Doblin challenged me to do a clinical trial looking at marijuana in patients with the AIDS wasting syndrome. And that was the beginning of my journey. It was not easy. And at times I felt like I couldn't do this anymore. Eric Gooseby, a colleague at San Francisco General, cautioned me that trying to do this, trying to study marijuana as a therapeutic intervention would jeopardize my career. So Lester Grinspoon was for me a beacon, a role model, and an inspiration. Besides Clint, who definitely said I had to do this study, looking at Lester and appreciating the magnitude of his contributions and the fact that he certainly was a respected academician allowed me to continue to fight the government until ultimately I won. So thank you, Lester.
Yeah, and I'd just like to say thank you for letting science be your guiding light, even though you're no longer with us. That was, well, I love that story of you making friends with Carl Sagan and going to a party and him smoking a joint and you, Lester, wherever you are now, freaking out, going, Lester having a fit, like, oh my God, you're one of the greatest minds in the country and you're ruining it with this poison. And Carl's like, nah, man, you don't even know what you're talking about. Just take a hit. So Lester went and did the research, looked at the science. There wasn't a lot available, but what there was pretty clear that it's safe and it's a lot safer than alcohol and it sure is fun. And so we have him on our side and he's left a great legacy, certainly, even though he's no longer with us. You can see my appreciation for this and also the forbidden medicine. But my favorite aspect is I have this copy of Marijuana, the Forbidden Medicine. That says, for Clint, with best wishes and warm regards, Lester Grinspoon. So this is the one I really treasure and it's going to be with me forever.
Thanks.